Okay? Any country that can do a popular uprising has constructed a common national identity. People can agree across ethnicities, across identity groups, across faith schisms that something needs to be addressed. Nigeria is not a country that is able to do a popular uprising because we are still stuck in the rut of ethnicity, religion, all of the manufactured divides, isms, and schisms. All right? Now, by contrast, a country like now, the Sudanese were able to bring down President Bashir because the Sudanese identity is deeper than the different ethnicities in Sudan. Madagascar was able to bring down a president because they have a shared identity. All right? Now, you can go, so you look at all the Burkina Faso has had a popular uprising.
Well, it's another Friday, State of the Nation on the Atlantic Discuss channel. Oh yes, it's still Nigeria, the largest concentration of Black people anywhere on the planet. We have to make sure Nigeria works. It's a lot of instability. It's like it gets worse every day. I always tell people my own focal point is always free and fair election, but it does look like if we don't get some fundamentals right, that dream of mine is just a pipe one. But a lot has been happening, so much has been happening, and we need to really talk about it. We need to talk about upsurge of coups in the West African sub-region in Africa, as it is. We need to, look at what really concludes to be a genocide. We need someone that can tell us what that really is. I remember in 94 years, already the Rwandan genocide. One of the reasons why there was late response was they knew people were dying, they knew people were killing people, but they weren't sure what was happening constituted to be a genocide at that time. So that's why today I brought in a legal luminary, the best you can get. He's written about it, he's talked about it. He said so much about the judiciary in Nigeria and Africa, an erudite scholar, no doubt. No other person than Professor Chidi Odinkalu. Professor Odinkalu, welcome to Atlanta Discuss State of the Nation.
Thanks a lot, Ade. I hope you're good. Compliments of the season.
Same to you, sir. Nice to see you after a while. You've been very busy. All right, Prof. Let's start with coups. At editorial level, we were talking yesterday, and everybody like this coup thing, especially the one in Benin, even though they quashed it, it looks like there might be a repetition or another one is going to happen. So we're like, what do you think are the underlying factors driving the recent surge of military coups in West Africa? Africa, yeah, but focal point West Africa. And how can regional bodies like ECOWAS effectively address this ongoing trend? Over to you, sir.
Well, if you look at the trend of coups in West Africa at the moment, and indeed in Africa, pretty much all of the affected countries are former French colonies. There is clearly a fissure between France and its former territories. The relationship quite clearly has been mismanaged on the part of France, it seems to me. The resentments are quite fundamental. We can, of course, anyone can pass the issue, what went wrong, but it's quite clear that things have gone wrong fundamentally. The tendency of France to dictate to its former territories, I think, has blown back dreadfully. And not just to dictate, but to seek to absorb them into a French orbit, while nevertheless clearly maintaining hierarchies between between Paris and the West African capitals, I think it's not gone down very well. But I think there is also an additional factor, which is the failure of African institutions to police democratic politics effectively. So we are now in the rather laughable situation where coups are bloodless and elections are very bloody. All right? You look at the elections, and now the reason we have to work our way to the African space is that all the underlying standards on governance in Africa are agreed at the level of the African Union. And all of the West African states are members of the African Union. They then drill down to the regional level in ECOWAS, for instance, which is the Regional Economic Community for West Africa. But if we begin at the African Union level, you have Article 4H of the Constitutive Act of the African Union. I mean, generally, Article 4, makes democratic politics, human rights, fundamental to the membership of the African Union. It also supposedly outlaws unconstitutional changes in government, which is coups. And you have that then translated into the regional continental treaty, which is the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Government, adopted, I believe, in 2007. And most African countries are now party to that. And it basically, lays down rules on elections, how they should be free and fair, how the African Union is supposed to monitor them. Now, the problem, however, is that when elections are fundamentally rigged and governments have gone rogue, the African Union nevertheless certifies them as free and credible. And progressively, therefore, the people have been denied choice. They've been denied agency in changing governments that have spent up their legitimacy. So you look at, say, Togo. Okay, the Yadima family has run Togo as a private estate since 1967. Some would argue that it started a little earlier, with the assassination of President Olympia in 1963. Now, the father dies when 20 years ago, or thereabout, 20 years ago, the son takes over. And in that period, he has basically re-engineered the system from a presidential system, direct franchise, to a system in which he basically rigs parliamentarians into parliament, and then the parliamentarians in turn designate him as the ruler of the country. And so the country is denied options. And when people try to protest, they get mowed down, they get killed. All right? So it's not difficult to think, well, Togo could implode anytime, because the options for civic show of force, civic choice, civic agency have totally been eviscerated. Take the coup that happened in Guinea. You had, which was in 2021. Now, you had COVID. Under cover of COVID, President Alpha Conde, who was termed out, decided to do, and 83 years old, by the way, decided to do a referendum to change the constitution to transform himself into a life president. When the people protested, he brought out the armed forces and killed over, several hundreds of them. He then secures his referendum, gets himself elected at 83, effectively to become a life president. There was no choice to the people. So what happened? They supported the army against Alpha Conde. But that election and all of these shenanigans were certified by ECOWAS. All right? You could go on and look at Mali. The ruling party in Mali in 2020 stole the seats that the opposition had got in parliament using the courts, the constitutional court, just the same way that it happens in Nigeria. Now, the people started protesting. They took to the streets. They were joined by the Islamists. And the rest is history. An uprising eventually resulted. The government was overthrown. So, because the regional institutions have decided to be dishonest in certifying elections that had no place in the pantheon of sensible elections, people have resorted to all manner of other ways to bring to an end governments that lack credible electoral legitimacy. And I do think that is a fundamental issue that we've got to solve with coups in West Africa. If we don't, the trend is likely to continue.
Oh wow, that's very scary. Because if we look at Benin Republic, they just changed the constitution also.
Precisely. Yeah. President Talon changed the constitution from 5 years to 7 years at a time when he should be simply handing over because he should be termed out. Okay?
Yeah. So, he's leaving, but it's not, he created a new Senate where he will be part of.
But this is the point. And by the way, you look at Cote d'Ivoire and what's happened there. President Ouattara, who was supposed to leave power in 2020, has now entered his 4th term in office. Okay? And again, a few people were killed, or some people were killed in the run-up to this, in the protests that took place. And opponents who are credible and who could have run against him, he used the courts to muzzle them out. Now, it's very interesting because I was involved in the case on the side of President Ouattara when he was excluded by Laurent Gbagbo.
Gbagbo, I remember.
Exactly, at the beginning of the decade, of the millennium. He was excluded because President Ouattara did carry a Burkinabe passport. And so they brought in the doctrine of ivoirité to exclude him from running for the presidency of Cote d'Ivoire. That took the country to the brink. And that had to be negotiated through. Again, France ultimately got involved in all of that. And now President Ouattara is doing exactly the same thing. All right? So this is the problem we've got here, that politicians are unwilling to play by the rules of credible democratic politics, to respect the sovereignty of the people and to respect the idea of credible elections. Without credible elections, you cannot, and let me repeat myself, we are in a situation in which elections have become bloody and coups have become bloodless.
Bloodless. Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know. You look at what's happening in Tanzania. A president has killed over 10,000 people in order to retain power. I know Tanzania is not in West Africa, but it is a classic demonstration of this crisis that we have at the moment. The next election we are going to have is Uganda in the middle of next month, in January, right? Now, in order to preclude a credible challenge, President Museveni has had his most credible opponent, that is Colonel Kizza Besigye, long retired from the army, a medical doctor, detained, first abducted from Kenya, then detained over the past year, and being tried before a military tribunal. He's a civilian, by the way, and all of that is kosher. So the things that we're doing in the name of democratic politics have no basis in the rules set up by African states themselves, whether you're looking at constitutions or you're looking at regional treaties. And unless we agree to abide by basic rules of the game, then it's of the political game, it's impossible. That means we return the game to the streets. And that is why you're having a rise in popular uprisings across the continent, right? So you've had since about 2014, since 2011, we've had, I believe, about 9 successful popular uprisings in which the people rose up against presidents or regimes that had totally spent their legitimacy and who refused to abide by the rules of democratic politics. That tells you that something is fundamentally wrong.
Let me chip in this. I read somewhere, I can't remember. Someone said Africans don't really hate their leaders. They would rather that leader be from their tribe or the same religion as they are. And for some reason I tend to agree somehow. So the question is, what role does ethnicity, religion, maybe I should use tribalism, play in all this? And what are the effects on colonialism in itself? Because most of these sit-tight dictators, they seem to have Western support, I mean, because if at the end of the day, maybe in most cases, like you give the example of France. France wants Talon, Talon stays. France wants Ouattara, Ouattara stays. It doesn't matter for how long. When they're tired of Ouattara, that's when it goes. The people don't really have much say. So what role does religion, tribalism, and colonialism play in all these sit tight and poor elections that we're organizing in Africa?
I mean, I'd be silly to say they don't play a role, but it's fairly complex.
Okay.
And I think it's difficult in the time we've got to, credibly and clinically isolate all the elements of these. Mahmoud Mamdani, in his quite well acclaimed book, Citizen and Subject, talks about how colonialism was, tribalization was the tool of colonialism, right? And so through tribalizations, colony invented hierarchies of identity. Okay, so particularly with the French and with the Belgians. But segregation was central to the project of colony. And, you and I are Nigerians. And if you take Nigeria, for instance, particularly in northern Nigeria, you had the walled city for indigents, right? You had Tudunwada, for instance, in northern Nigeria, for Nigerians from the north. You had Sabongeri for Nigerians from outside the north. Okay, mostly for for people of different faith. Of different faith. I don't want to use the epithets that I used to describe, but people of different faith manifestation who were not supposed to integrate, and so they went to the Sabongeri. Okay, and those segregations were maintained, and indeed in the rest of the country, if you go south, we also had GRAs, and GRAs were maintained for the whites, and if you were the only blacks who were in GRAs were blacks who were servants, domestic servants of white folks. Now, when the white people, of course, left, GRAs became colonized by the new local elite, right? Which is how places like Ikoyi and Victoria Island, for instance, became marked for the new post-colonial elite in Nigeria. And you can look at other parts of Africa; these have been replicated. So now these segregations have been maintained in many ways post-colony, but I do not necessarily now has France meddled in the affairs of its former territories. I think so. The records are quite clear. The President Mitterrand's son was better known as Papa Madi. My father told me, and the idea was he was his father's personal emissary to African territories and African presidents. And whenever he went to meet with one of those African presidents, whether it was Bongo or Yadema or Biya or Mobutu, the conversation after the initial greetings began, Papa Madi, my father has told me to tell you, okay? So there's that Papa Madi tendency in a lot of the relationships. That's true. Is that the only story, though? I do not think so. Now, there is also a failure of post-colonial nation building, okay? Any country that can do a popular uprising has constructed a common national identity. People can agree across ethnicities, across identity groups, across faith schisms that something needs to be addressed. Nigeria is not a country that is able to do a popular uprising because we are still stuck in the rut of ethnicity, religion, all of the manufactured divides, isms, and schisms. All right? Now, by contrast, a country like the Sudanese were able to bring down President Bashir because the Sudanese identity is deeper than the different ethnicities in Sudan. Madagascar was able to bring down a president because they have a shared identity. All right? Now, you can go, so you look at all the Burkina Faso has had a popular uprising. that which brought down Blaise Compaoré. You had a popular uprising in Mali. You pretty much had a popular uprising in Guinea. Okay, so now these popular uprisings, not to mention the popular uprisings of the Arab Spring, these popular uprisings are rather perversely a testament to successful nation building. The fact that people can come together and say, you know what, this is our country, and we are going to pay whatever price is needed to push this person out and deny this regime legitimacy. And in some ways, we've got to credit any country that can have a popular uprising. Of course, a popular uprising is different from a coup in one fundamental way.
Absolutely.
In a coup, people set out to overthrow an existing government with the design of replacing it with a government, with a leader or a regime without democratic legitimacy. Okay? In a popular uprising, by contrast, the people decide that they are going to withdraw habitual support to a regime that has spent its legitimacy and refuses to go. They don't have a plan as to how they are going to replace it. They don't have a pre-agreed plan as to who is going to replace it. They just say, you know what, this thing must be brought to an end. Howsoever it happens thereafter, we will fix it after that. So a coup, a popular uprising, is different from a coup. And I'm focusing on popular uprisings because it is evidence of progress in nation building and evidence that some African countries have transcended those assumptions about tribalism, religion, interfaith schisms. And I think we've got to take that seriously. But there are African countries, and Nigeria, I think, is a paradigmatic example, that have been unable to do that. Cameroon is another example. And Cameroon is one of the most complex countries in Africa. I know it is not in West Africa. We are supposed to be discussing, but it is next to West Africa. Absolutely. And we have free movement of persons between Nigeria and Cameroon. Absolutely. Now, so we have a common boundary, and indeed our longest boundary is with Cameroon. Now, Cameroon has what, 25 million people, and over 200, about 230 ethnic and linguistic groups. Wow. Right? So pound for pound, it's probably one of the most complex countries in Africa. I know Nigeria has about 389, 390 ethnic groups, but then we've got over 237, about 240 million people. Compare that with Cameroon, and you see that, just per capita, Cameroon is a lot more complex. But overlaid on all of that, you also have the Francophone-Anglophone divide, right? So it makes it well-nigh, and then in addition to that, you have the Christian South and Muslim North divide, okay? So when you look at Cameroon, it is extraordinarily complex. And again, Cameroon has not been able to transcend those divides of ethnicity and religion and all of these, and all the phones, Anglophone, Francophone divides that we talk about. And Nigeria and Cameroon, I think, represent two of those countries where popular uprisings are difficult, which is why whenever you have a protest in Cameroon, it ends up in Douala, which is the commercial capital, at the bottom of the country, at the Atlantic littoral. And it doesn't really get to Yaoundé, which is the capital of the country. And, President Biya is credited with a classic statement: Quand Yaoundé respire, Cameroon vide. When Yaoundé is breathing, as long as Yaoundé breathes, Cameroon is alive. Okay? So as far as he's concerned, and as far as the regime is concerned, once they can ring-fence Yaoundé, Cameroon is okay. The rest of the country can burn. So this tendency, therefore, to divide countries, carve them up across demographics, across geopolitical spaces, I think is not necessary, may have been learned from the colonists, okay? But I think it is fundamentally now sustained by our own African rulers.
Oh, wow. All right. Let's talk about the genocide in Nigeria. Now, why I'm asking you this is, I know you've written a lot of books, you've been all over Africa for arbitration purposes, involved in cases and all that. So I know you from Rwanda and even the Ivory Coast you were talking about, everywhere you've been, Gambia and what have you. So I don't know anybody else I can ask this. And like I referred to earlier on, when the Rwandan genocide started, one of the reasons why the world did not respond on time was that the ingredients there was killing. But can you call that, whatever was going on in Rwanda at that time, an act of genocide? So my first question to you is this. Statistically, we know more Christians have been killed in Nigeria in the last 5, 7, 8, even 10 years. And these are international statistics, corroborated statistics from reputable institutions. So that is not in doubt. But the government of the day has also said that there is no genocide in Nigeria. Father Kuka said it also, there is no Christian genocide in Nigeria. Everybody's saying this. But there's also a strong argument now from the United States, from people that live in Benue. I have had one or two of them on my show lately. Frank Arthur, whose sister is still in an IDP camp. And the evidence are there. One even said it categorically that the military is culpable. They help, they disarm the locals, give guns to the headers and all that. So let me narrow it down. My first question on the genocide to you is what is happening in Nigeria an act of genocide? Can we call it an act of genocide from your legalistic point of view?
I hate to get bogged down in the language of genocide and not genocide. I'm ashamed about what the government is doing and saying.
Absolutely. I am too.
Okay. Now, so you're told your own people are being killed in industrial numbers. And your answer is actually you haven't got that right, because a lot more people are being killed than you say are being killed, which is really what it says, what the government is saying when they say, oh, Muslims are being killed too. Now, first of all,
which increases the figure.
Thank you. So quantitatively, therefore, you're saying many more people are being killed than those of you are saying. But the fact, by the way, that you say another identity group is being killed also does not necessarily mean, as a legal issue, that an allegation of genocide by a different identity group is not sustained or sustainable. That's an evidentiary issue. So the claim that Christians are suffering genocide in Nigeria is not necessarily defeated by saying Muslims are being killed too. Those two claims can perfectly coexist as factually and legally sustainable. Okay? Now, but the thing is this, the politics of genocide, of course, and we're speaking in December 2025, around the 77th anniversary of the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention, of course, was adopted on the 9th of December 1948, the day before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted on the 10th of December 1948. So this is a fairly significant and symbolic conversation that we're having just 3 years before the 80th anniversary of the Genocide Convention. But the politics of genocide, I think, has significantly evolved. Now, really, the difference between genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and other forms of mass atrocities is actually not significant anymore. All right? And there is no question, in my view, that there is a persecution of Christians in certain parts of northern Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Okay? Nor is there a question, in my view, that there are mass atrocities being committed affecting Christians in certain parts of northern Nigeria. I don't think I would be dishonest if I said anything else. And I should note that Bishop Kuka has, at least I've seen statements by him in the past week indicating that he has been misrepresented in that the broad sweep of what he said was misrepresented, and I've seen the texts that he used in his Rome remarks and then in his Kaduna remarks with the Knights of Sembulumba, which, in my view, probably back him up when he says that people yanked particular lines out of what he said without reflecting the fullness of his statements. And I, in his own remarks, he actually did say that there was genocide against Christians in Nigeria, and attributed that to the failure of government to ensure accountability for the mass atrocities, consistent failure. And I was just reading an article today, earlier today, by a young woman, Adobe Obiabumo, in which she argues, and in my view, very persuasively, about one thing. You see, we sit down here and we reel out numbers. Oh, in Papiri, 300 and something children, schoolgirls, were abducted. In that other place, 25 school kids were abducted. In that other place, 100 and that school kids were abducted. Do you know what it takes to move these children from one place to the other? Okay? Now, you go to a school and take hundreds, take Papiri, St. Mary's Papiri in Niger State, 300 plus school children, and then you move them. First of all, nobody reports the traffic, the movement of those who went to attack these schools. Nobody tells you how long it takes to collect this number of children. And then they are then relocated to another, and nobody notices. We don't have soldiers, we don't have police, we don't have state security service, there is no aerial capability. I cannot believe that this kind of thing can take place without the complicity of the security services or the politicians or both. It's just not possible. And what this article is arguing, which I said I read earlier today, is that the sector commanders or brigade or battalion or whatever commanders of the security services in wherever these places, these kinds of incidents take place, have got to be made answerable and accountable in those circumstances. And it seems to me that's not negotiable. Mm-hmm. You cannot simply tell me that somebody collects 100 children, 200 children from a school and takes them, relocates them somewhere, whether it is done in a truck or in Hilux vans or indeed by bikes. Somebody will know how that happened.
I mean, 20 students is a lot of students.
Precisely.
Yeah, so 300 is quite an overwhelming number of people.
And you're not transporting cattle. You're not transporting livestock. You're transporting human beings.
Absolutely.
And we have gone along with this narrative for too long. And so there are so many things wrong that getting stuck on whether it is called genocide or not, in my view, misses the real issue. Are there mass atrocities going on? Absolutely, in my view, there are mass atrocities. The idea that you pick up people from places of worship and take a knife and slit their throats like you're killing a Christmas goat, right? Or a Christmas lamb offering is just plainly pre-Neanderthal. And what I find most galling is that our politicians cannot even find space to pause and ask what the hell is going on and say, no, this cannot happen to our people. And the reason, in my view, that is allowed to happen is because our politicians do not need votes to get to power. Because if they are killing these people and they were your voters, you do something about it if you needed their votes to get to power. But because they don't need votes, the people they need are the judges. They protect the judges and nothing else is protected. This is my thesis here. And we've got to get back, therefore, until votes start counting. These kinds of atrocities will continue.
Okay, clearly, I mean, the government of the day is helpless. I mean, I think that...
No, I don't think they're helpless.
Yeah, but
I think they are complicit. No.
Okay, fine. That's another way to look at it. Yeah, they are complicit. So in this complicity, the Americans have shown interest now, a lot of interest. And I was listening to Riley Moore's statement, and it does look like they have concluded with the fact-finding mission that it's even worse than they thought of ab initio. That's really, really, really bad. Now, what kind of help do you think Nigeria needs? I mean, it's clear that those are complicit. Let's use that word complicit. Those are complicit definitely will not want to solve the problem because it's working to their advantages. Reverend Laddie Thompson, my last guest, said that these guys, that he even said the president of the day has an agreement with the Hausa Fulani that, I mean, he was very emphatic that he's very sure that he would not do anything against them because there's an agreement. You rule for so time, they hand over, within that space. Now, the thing is, the Americans have shown a lot of interest. And now, as a human rights lawyer yourself, you've seen it all, especially in Africa and all that. What kind of help? Because America sometimes they come to the rescue of a country ignorantly. They don't understand the socio-cultural, the geopolitical issues there. Because America has not really colonized countries like Britain, maybe 1, 2, 3, but they don't really have that intrinsic knowledge of countries they come in. And they sometimes, in so many cases, they leave it worse than they met it. So in this kind of scenario, what kind of help do you think Nigeria needs?
I obviously cannot tell Americans what to
do. What kind of help?
No, can I tell, do I have a mandate to represent, the kind of help Nigerians need or Nigeria needs? What I can say, and I think what is within my purview to say is fairly straightforward as a Nigerian citizen, that it's disgraceful that hearings, parliamentary hearings, on the crisis of mass atrocity killings in Nigeria are not taking place in Abuja. They are not taking place at the National Assembly. They are taking place in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. They are not being presided over by Nigerian legislators. It is American legislators who are sitting to discuss what is happening in Nigeria with the killing of Nigerians. It tells you something is wrong with the Nigerian side. I cannot begrudge the Americans what they do in their parliament. All right? That will be silly. But I have the standing to say that our parliament is misled, misplaced, and criminal. Because you cannot have this amount of killings and incidents affecting your people, and you are unwilling to wield parliamentary oversight. And when parliamentarians like Eyinaya Baribe, for instance, try to say something, you have their colleagues trying to bully them into being shut down. That is why I say that there is high-level political complicity. You cannot square that circle in any way that makes sense. Now, Nigeria may need help, but first of all, Nigeria is not helping itself. Okay? I mean, I have some very close friends who are deployed on the front lines in the Middle Belt and in the Northeast. And I have to check up on them fairly regularly. And I cannot say publicly what I hear from them. All right? And they are living on the very, very edge. And I do think that a country that cannot even... Now, we had a situation in which a brigadier general of the Nigerian army was killed in the most atrocious manner by terrorists, by domestic terrorists, right? And his killing was recorded on camera and put out everywhere. So his children would have seen it, his wife saw it, his widow saw it. And on the day this came out, the vice president headed to Kogi State to go and do the reception of people leaving one party and crossing over into his party. On that same day, the president went to address judges at the All Nigerian Judges Conference, where they did not even have the presence of mind to observe a moment of solemn remembrance for this man and the other soldiers who were killed, because he also lost other soldiers in that. Instead, they started singing "On Your Mandate We Shall Stand." So how am I going to, in the face of all of this, begin to think that the first thing to do is to start talking about the Americans? I cannot, in good conscience, begin to speak about Americans. Something is fundamentally wrong with the Nigerian leadership. Absolutely. And finally, on this particular issue, I don't know whether you remember, 3 years ago, Najatu Mohammed did say that she had a meeting at candidate Tinubu's request then with him about supporting him in his pitch for the presidency. Mm-hmm. And Najatu claimed that she asked him what would he do to address this situation in the north, to which candidate Tinubu told him that he could not have a plan because if he did anything, he would be killed.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is consistent with what he's doing.
What's happening now?
All right. He's not lifting, he does not appear interested in lifting a finger. The suffering indifference to the suffering in northern Nigeria in particular is extraordinary. And it is not natural. If you are a president presiding over a country like Nigeria in particular, in which your own people are being suffering on this scale and in which your own people are being killed on this scale, you cannot be as somnolent as President Tinubu has chosen to appear to be.
Well, I want to ask you about the judiciary. You said everything that needed to be said. It doesn't look like anything is changing. And at the conference, the judges' conference, where they sang that on your mandate, which I mean, of course, everybody felt it was really a betrayal of whatever they stand for. Now, we are sure now, and it is clear that one of the reasons why there's this lackadaisical approach by our leaders is because the people's votes don't count. They don't owe the people. That's what it looks like. Now, the judiciary, which of course should be the last hope of the masses, is looking like it's most culpable, not just culpable, maybe actually they were complicit. So my question to you, what hope lies ahead for the people? I mean, what message of hope what do you think the people, because people are forlorn, downcasted. It's like almost every strata of government is almost non-functional. You know, I mean, like you said, the American Congress were discussing Nigeria-related issues, and our Congress, our own, were just doing bow and go for yes. our ambassadors, which was very shameful. I felt that even if just for 30 minutes, you should have just asked that. I mean, if somebody is going to Malaysia, there's something to ask about Nigeria-Malaysia relationship, no matter how ordinary. You understand? Even if it's Benin Republic, you know, yeah. that you should have at least 5 questions for a Nigerian ambassador. So I know hope looks bleak, but historically, nothing lasts forever. So, but what message of hope do you have for Nigerians? That would be my last question to you.
Well, first of all, these things are cyclic in my view. Human, the course of the trajectory of human progress is cyclic. There's no, it's not unilinear.
One way fix all.
Exactly. Things go up, they come down, they go up again, they come down, and
undulating. Yeah?
It's very undulating. Okay? So we are clearly in a moment of reversal, and the reversal is not just in Nigeria; it's global.
It's global. Okay? That's true.
There is a virus about of sorts globally, and it's affecting everywhere.
Europe is very worried now. Yeah,
absolutely, yes. So it's made landfall across many countries in the world, and I think Nigeria is one of those. And we've got to confront that reality. So that's one thing. But it's also that we have it in ourselves to be able to ease our way out of this challenge. All right, whether it is the judiciary at least in my view, because of the public pressure. The leadership of the judiciary at the level of the Chief Justice, for the most part, is making all the right noises. Now, so the thing now is to use the noises they are making to begin to hold them to account, to hold them to certain standards. Are we going to win everything all the time? Obviously not. But is it possible that there could be some modest gains? I do think that is well possible. And I do think we've got to continue to hammer away at that. I do not believe, however, that progress on the judiciary, for instance, can come from technocratic fixes. No, I think we have to have a fundamental political reordering of the interinstitutional bargain. So, I don't know whether you listened to the recent remarks of the president of the Court of Appeal, where she was saying, spoke in language as basically suggested that governors owned judges. So judges belong to the governors of the territories where they work, which also means that the president owns federal judges, right? And then, and she said something like, people should not begrudge us if the governments whom we work for look after us. I'm close to quoting her word for word. You people should not begrudge us if the governments whom we work for look after us. Take care of us. Exactly. Okay. Now, the kind of, the mindset of a senior judge, because the president of the Court of Appeal is the second senior most judge in Nigeria, strictly speaking, the kind of mentality that comes out with that stream of consciousness is extraordinary when you think about it in terms of the mission of the judiciary, because that mindset does not even understand that the judiciary is supposed to be a co-equal branch of government within the framework of separation of powers.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? That requires reordering. It's not going to be reordered by any technical fix. It's going to be reordered fundamentally through a political solution. And that's really why I campaign on judicial independence and the judiciary, because we do need a critical political force around which we can coalesce the vision for a different kind of institution building for the judiciary. Kenya did that in 2010. South Africa did that in 1993, 94, up to 96. And I do think we have a responsibility in Nigeria to reimagine our judiciary and think that is going to be possible. And for that, the possibilities excite me. I do think that we can do precisely that.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. And you can see that the politicians are beginning to understand. You saw PDP write to the president of the Chief Judge of Federal High Court. No, the Chief Judge of, the Chief Justice of the Federation and the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court recently complaining that all the cases involving Nyesom Wike were going before
certain judges.
They were going before Justice Lifu, Justice Omotosho, and Justice Abdul Malik. And they said, this new case that has come before you must not be assigned to any of these. Now, that is extraordinary. All right? Because this is political. This is not technical anymore. Under a properly working system, a political party cannot make that kind of intervention in the workings of the judiciary. Absolutely. The fact that the political party has chosen to make that kind of extraordinary intervention in this particular public way tells you we are not in usual territory anymore. Yeah. And that, in my view, a lot more of this political intervention and kneecapping of the judicial brigandage that we're having needs to happen until we get to that point where everybody believes this is no longer sustainable. So guys, can we pull back and begin to rethink this thing, how to make it work? We're not going to make progress. So if we're going to be thinking, okay, what needs to happen is we call the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, we call a few judges, and we kind of do the fix. No, it's not going to. Today I've been looking at the new list of, because there are vacancies in the Federal High Court, okay? Then they are going to be doing interviews, I believe, in the second week of the new year for these new vacancies. And I'm looking at the list. It's not yet been made public, but I'm looking at the list of the candidates who are going to be interviewed across the 9 or so states where there are vacancies to be filled. Pretty much over 60% of them or close belong to children of insiders.
Wow.
Judicial insiders. Wow. And political insiders. We cannot continue like this. And these insiders are being preferred well ahead of people who are manifestly better. So, you see, unless we address this, we're not going to make any progress. But I'm excited about the possibilities because we are beginning to, it's gradual. And we may not fix all of it in the lifetime of yourself or myself, but it's beginning to happen. People are getting interested, and politicians are recognizing if we don't fix this judicial thing, our political careers will not work, and our political system and system of political competition will not be viable. That, I think, should give us some hope.
Wow, I think I agree with you, and hopefully that will culminate into having better elections also. Because if there's some fixes in the judiciary, it will naturally go into the election process.
If we don't fix our judiciary, we cannot have proper elections, because the judiciary has consistently, since at least 2003, kneecapped our electoral laws.
Yeah, I read your book, so I know. I'm
Absolutely.
an authority on it now. The one I find most amazing was it the guy in Anambra that didn't go to election at all or something, that they just brought from nowhere based
Obanese.
I forgot the name. It was in Selectorate.
Yes, Obanese.
Obanese, yeah. That just brought from nowhere. And of course, the Imo State governor who was fought. And, I'm telling you, if we didn't read this thing, if it was happening in, say, Sierra Leone or somewhere or some other country, we're like, oh, it will never happen in Nigeria. But lo and behold, we have it here.
I'm actually thinking that there is a documentary to be made out of some of the stories in that book.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because a lot of our people don't read, and I think we've got to find other ways to get these ideas out to people. So I want to explore the idea of making a documentary out of it and seeing how it goes. Yeah.
You should. Thank you, Prof, for your time. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for, going the extra mile to give us clarity on areas we are not very sure of. Yes, we need to read more. I think the white people have been saying it. You want the black man to see it, put it in a book. I disagree with it, even though it is true. I remember when I was younger, I read one of the encyclopedia, I think was it Britannica, I'm not sure. So the definition of Yoruba tribe, I read Merry-making tribe of West Africa.
There you go.
I was like, we're erudite scholars with all our academic prowess. But guess what? At my age now, I'm like, looks like these guys somehow, maybe they are partly right, partly. You got it. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. So to all our viewers, you heard it from Prof. We need to show more interest. Office of the Citizen has to be activated. We need to talk more. The fantastic example today was that of the PDP that wrote straight to the leadership of the judiciary. Do not take our cases to these judges. They seem to be compromised. And that has really boxed them to a corner, And we can see there's been some traction in PDP, really, some semblance of improvement. And I hope the new INEC chairman does the right thing. On genocide, well, we hope and we pray that whatever intervention comes is for the good of the nation, the good of the people. And for the coup, if the elections are not free and fair, it's a recipe for disaster. If it can happen in Benin, if it can happen in Guinea-Bissau, it can happen anywhere. We don't want bloody elections and bloody coup. We don't want bloody anything. We just need free and fair elections. And the military should kill, destroy, arrest whoever is trying to kill Christians or Muslim alike. So it's a wrap there. Thank you, Prof. Thank you always. Thank you for your time.
And have a fantastic holiday season as well.
You too, sir.